Welcome to Authors Revealed. I'm Becky Anderson. I'm so excited. New York Times best-selling author Mary Kay Andrews is here with her new book. It's called Save the Date. What a perfect beach read. Mary Kay, welcome to Anderson's in Naperville. We're thrilled to finally have you here.
And I'm thrilled to finally be here.
Yeah. So the new book, Save the Date.
Yes.
And it's been out, I think, almost 2 weeks. It came out June 3rd.
Right.
So what are you hearing from all your fans and readers?
My readers seem to love it. Everybody likes a wedding story. They like the flower. You know, she's a florist. The character Kara Krizik is a flower. They like what my editor calls designer porn. They like the Savannah setting. And I'll tell you what surprised me. Everybody loves a shaggy dog story.
Yeah,
and there's a shaggy dog in this book.
Yeah. A Labradoodle.
A Labradoodle. A golden doodle. A golden doodle.
I always get them mixed up.
I do too.
Golden doodle. Yeah. So where did the seed start to grow for this story? Where are the ideas?
You
This
know,
would make a great setting, of someone who's a florist, a wedding, dealing with weddings and that sort of thing.
Sometimes the title comes first. And I don't know if the title came first, but it came early. We were planning a launch party for last year's book, Ladies' Night, and my planning person said, we'll send out Save the Date cards. And I thought, Save the Date, that's a book title.
Yeah.
And then while we were doing that, a wedding planner told me a story about they were planning to have a big society wedding at this venue. And the Thursday before the rehearsal dinner, the groom texted the bride, "We both know this will never work." And then he checked himself into a mental hospital.
Wow.
So that gave me the idea to have a runaway bride. And then a friend told me this shaggy dog story about a dog mix-up. And I had filed that away. I thought, someday that makes a great meet cute. The meet cute in Save the Date is a mix-up over dogs.
I love Kara in this book, and I loved her independence. And also, she has that cynical side to her, which
Yeah.
I always love in characters like this. But is she based on anything, or is it just something that totally comes from your imagination? Is she a composite of people you know?
No, I think she's just somebody who's been wounded in the battle of love.
Right.
And she's battle scarred, and so she doesn't believe in, even though she does weddings every day, she doesn't really believe in fairy tale endings. And when I was doing research for the book, I hung out with a wedding florist in Savannah and watched, a couple come in, a bride and a groom, with their iPad and their Pinterest board and, pinning, these are the flowers, this is, what we want. And when they left, I said, well, what did you think? And they were like, I said, do you all ever talk about the chances couples will have of survival? And they all laughed and said, yeah, we kind of do. And I thought, okay, that I can see that my florist and her assistant would be handicapping engaged couples' chances of making a go of a marriage.
Yeah, interesting. And Jack Finnerty, we don't want to give too much away about this book, but he's a historic building, he restores, he's
Yes.
a restoration sort of
Right.
person in this, which I think is so cool, because I love that kind of thing, which added a great stuff. But he's the one, and we'll just say a little bit, has something to do with the golden doodle there.
Yes,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
But he's sort of the love interest.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Right. So to me, Savannah, you say Savannah, it's such a beautiful city, and it's a character in this book. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, Savannah is one of those rare places that's, I like it because it's a place where the new meets the old. And when that happens, you have a clash. And that clash makes for conflict, but it drips humidity and it drips atmosphere, and you have a lot of people who are very insular, and then you bring in an outsider like Kara is not from Savannah.
She's from Ohio.
She's from Ohio. She talks funny. She has a funny name, Krizik, nobody can pronounce. And when I moved to Savannah as a 22-year-old, I was not from Savannah. I didn't have a southern accent, and I had a name they couldn't pronounce. So a little bit of that did carry over.
Yeah, right. So Savannah, and
Yes.
I think that it must be one of those places like some cities in the United States, and of course even outside of the country, become that destination wedding
Yes.
place.
It's like the third most popular. I didn't know that at the time.
Wow,
It's
that's
the third most
interesting.
popular place for a destination wedding.
So you said you talked to a wedding planner.
Yes.
But did you do any other type of research? And is the research part and I know you do some
Yeah.
for every book that you write, whether it's some of your mysteries or your series of these types of books. The research, is it fun? And
Oh,
what
yeah.
did you do for this book? I know you must have done something about flowers.
Yeah,
and what florists do.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a wedding stylist, very talented. She's written a book called Vintage Weddings, Elizabeth Demas,
Oh, okay.
and she helped me tremendously. And her book was a tremendous resource. And then she hooked me up with a wedding florist in Savannah, so I hung out with them while they were making flower arrangements and meeting with brides and grooms. And then, the internet, Pinterest.
Yeah.
So my publisher said when the book was done, it's like a living, breathing Pinterest board with a story arc.
Oh yeah.
Wait.
But Pinterest is you can find so many cool.
Oh
ideas.
yeah, and that's what I did. I was looking for, I need details about what a goth wedding would look like. Oh, you can put goth wedding in the search engine for Pinterest, and you'll find pictures of brides wearing, black leather bustiers and custom designed tattoos.
Very cool. Very cool. So looking at today's brides, and the lavish extravagance that goes into so many weddings and the expectations. What I liked about the book is looking at the business side of it, and how Kara is trying to survive and make her business a go.
Right.
So it was kind of interesting to see the two sides of this, where she has this potential of a $250,000 wedding in order to this could make or break her business. So it was so interesting to see the business side, but. How do you look at some of the weddings that happen today? Because it's changed.
I think I'm so jaded. I mean, I got married at 22, and my mother and my mother-in-law, rolled meatballs and made spinach dip, and I wore a dress that was on clearance that I paid for on layaway. I was working at a department store, so every week some of my paycheck went to my wedding dress, and we had a band, a small band, but when the band left after 2 hours, everybody wanted to keep partying. Somebody went and got a stereo and we played records.
Yeah. Right.
And, so these over-the-top weddings, and you think, gosh, I wonder if the marriage can ever exceed the expectations of a wedding.
Right.
Because, the day after the wedding, that dress is used. And it's you and your husband.
Right.
And you're not planning a Vegas spectacle.
Right.
You're planning on living together and getting along.
Yeah. It just seems so much planning for something that's lasts such a short
It's so ephemeral.
Right, exactly. I love Kara's approach, to being, and she's independent. She's a very independent person. And the way she looks at her business and what she needs to know to pay off her loans to make it succeed. And I really felt as a small business owner, I felt her frustration, as you know, all of us in the independent
Sure,
how we feel about seeing it. But I really enjoyed that part that you put into this book about her and what she's doing to try and survive.
Yeah, I'm interested in women's work. I'm not interested in writing a book about shopping. I'm interested in a book about women making their way in the world. And yes, the characters in my books, I write romantic comedy. I think of them as romantic comedy. So it isn't about them getting the man. It's about getting the life they want. And for most of us, the life we want also involves having work that we're passionate about.
Right. Yeah, and she's definitely passionate.
Yeah.
I like the way you sort of paved the way. And Kara's, she's had a bad divorce. She had a husband who cheated on her, but she has a background of a dad who was, we look sort of our dad as the role model of what we're looking for in a man. Some women, do, and she had a dad who wasn't really there for her emotionally, But you see how it's paved, but you don't make it easy for Jack. And I love that way you lay that
thank you.
out, which is really fun.
Yeah, I couldn't understand why the father was the way he was. And I have a writers group I'm a member of, and we do twice yearly retreats. And I kept saying, I can't figure out why this father acts like he does. I know he loves his daughter, but he's just so demanding and so authoritarian. And one of the women's husband had been career Navy. And she said, well, the father sounds like a lot of the career Navy men that my husband worked with. And we looked at each other and I said, it's the colonel. And all of a sudden, it just sort of fell into place.
Right, because it makes total sense.
Yeah.
The barn.
Yeah.
And, I've heard so many times of people having receptions.
Yes.
In these beautiful restored barns.
Right.
And, different places in the country.
Oh, sure. It's a huge thing now.
It's a huge thing. And so, that was really cool of the description. About the barn.
I just, part of what I love to do is when you build a book, you build a world. And, my world happens to be pretty. And so I just had Jack build the barn that I would have built if I had the time and the money and the taste.
Right. Well, it's pretty cool. Very cool. So this is your 12th book you've written as Mary Kay Andrews, right?
13th, I think.
Is it 13th?
I think it is, yeah.
And a lot of people, I know you're really publishing almost one a year and coming out, right?
Yeah, well, last year was a 2-book year.
But they come out sort of just in
First
time
week
for
of June.
perfect summer reading.
Right.
And a lot of people I call these sort of
They're beach books.
They're beach books, but they're really fun. They're fun, but they're engaging, and you feel very satisfied. Do you like the word beach read?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I own it. I mean, that's what I want to write. I want to write a book that my reader will, I'm happy with calling it the literary equivalent of a mojito.
Yeah, I like that.
It's refreshing. It's fun. It's tasty. I do want my readers to have I don't want it to be empty calories, but I think it should be fun, and I think it can be.
I think a mojito and a Mary Kay Andrews book would be a
Perfect.
great combo.
Yeah.
So is it difficult to write books? So, I mean, they're fairly close in succession. And when
One
you
a
have
year.
deadlines,
Yeah.
does that put a lot of pressure on you as a writer?
It does, but everybody has pressure on them. You have pressure to sell a certain number of books and to pay your rent. And it's a good kind of pressure. Today I had a conversation with my editor. The new book is due in November, and we trashed it. We just discarded it. And we came up with a new title and a new premise and a new storyline. And now I have to, after I get off the road, I'm going to go home and write it.
Wow. Well, that's no pressure at all.
It's the same pressure everybody else has.
So, you've written 10 mysteries,
Mm-hmm.
I think, before,
Yeah.
Under your real name.
Yes.
Kathy Hogan.
Trocheck, yeah.
And with the Callahan Garrity mysteries,
Right.
which are very popular. And why did you decide to write under a pseudonym, to use Mary Kay Andrews? And then also, too, what do you enjoy? Or is it nice switching it up, going from, these type of books, these romantic sort of just great reads, to sort of the mystery about with the Callahan?
Well, I started writing mystery because that's what I had been reading. I was a newspaper reporter. I wanted out of newspapers, and I thought if I could write and stay home, that would be the ticket. And I was reading a lot of Sarah Paretsky and Sue Grafton. And so I came up with a concept with a police detective who quits the force and buys a cleaning business. She gets a PI license. And I did 10 of those, and I loved them, and they were very well, there's 8 Callahans.
Right.
They were very well received, but I was impatient. I kept thinking, why aren't we selling more books? And then I had the idea for a different kind of book, set in Savannah, a place I loved and had lived, with an antique dealer, which is sort of my passion, junking.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be a category mystery, but it was not one of my series books. And so I thought, let me try writing it under a pseudonym. That way, if my mystery readers get mad at me and hate it, I can abandon it and, go right back to being Kathy. To our surprise, Savannah Blues was that book. It came out in 2002. Right off the bat, from an unknown author with no track record, it's outsold all the Callahans combined.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so at that point it was like, Kathy's dead, long live Mary Kay. And the pseudonym is a combination of my kids' names, right?
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Okay. So when you sit down to write a story, do you outline? Do you know the beginning? Do you know the end? Do you outline, or is it as you're writing, it's surprising you as much as it us?
Well, I start with a very, very vague roadmap. I know the premise. I know what she does. It's important to me to know her name and what she looks like and who her people are, as we say in the South.
Right, sure.
And I know I want a happy ending.
Yeah.
And I start at the beginning. I start with a synopsis. And then I write in a really linear way. So I know the ending I'm going to, but you see this people talk about you're in the car, but the only thing your headlights show is what's right in front of you, and that's sort of true. I know where I want to go, but I have only a vague idea of how to get there.
So your junking habit.
Yes, it is a.
Yeah. But where did that start? And you must have found some really interesting things over here.
Yeah, well, I grew up in St. Pete, Florida, the home of the newlywed and the nearly dead, and that's where old people go to die, and they bring their antiques. And so my mother was a junker. We had 5 kids and no money. And when I got married, I had no money, so I would go junking in Savannah and buy, a little chair, a plate, something to, make my little apartment, our little apartment, a home. And it sort of just went on from there. So I junk wherever I go. And I junked this morning in Gurnee right before my library. Well, I didn't buy anything because my driver only gave me 13 minutes to shop. It was worse than a husband. But, when 5 years ago, I was on the Jersey Shore, and my daughter was about to give birth to my first grandchild. And I was so nervous. She was going to have a C-section. So nervous waiting for her to go in that I thought, I can't stay in this hotel room. So I went junking. And I bought a sign it's an old weather-beaten sign that says, no fishing, no jumping, no diving, no crabbing from pier. And it's all weather-beaten. And I just love it. And it's in my beach house in Savannah. But it reminds me of the day my granddaughter was born. Every time I see that sign, it makes me smile.
So it's a real treasure.
Yeah.
Great.
It wouldn't be to somebody else, but it is to me.
No, for sure. So you married your high school sweetheart.
Yeah, I did.
And that's sort of, I did that too. I'm one of those people too.
You've got your starter husband?
I did, and I've stuck with that starter.
Me
husband.
too.
But in your books, it's not as easy.
Right.
For a lot of your characters.
Yeah, a lot of my characters aren't as lucky to recognize what they want and what they need. And, somebody that's married for 37 years happily, it's kind of a snooze in real life. We're not very dramatic. We just rock along and, we're not the stuff of great fiction. The stuff of great fiction is when, in ladies' night, when you put a car into a swimming pool because you catch your husband cheating, or when you come home and you find flowers from him and he's cheated and you dump the flowers in the middle of the bed and leave. Our life doesn't
have those.
Great. I'm so grateful it does not have those explosions.
Right. So you have a bachelor's in journalism.
I do.
At the University of Georgia.
Yes.
So, and you, when you started off, you worked at the Atlanta Journal.
Yeah.
Constitution.
No, I started in Savannah and then I moved. Yeah, the Atlanta paper is a big major daily. You don't start out as a 22-year-old there.
But you were covering it at some point.
Yeah.
Some real murder trials.
Right.
So what did all that experience as a journalist? What did you bring to your fiction writing from those experiences?
Oh, so many things. For one thing, the discipline. That you sit down and write. There's no muse. You don't wait on the muse because there's an editor standing over your shoulder saying, I need it 15 minutes ago. So you don't wait on the muse. And then listening carefully. I love to write dialogue, and I think that's directly an offshoot of my years as a reporter because you have to listen carefully so you don't misquote people, and observing because sometimes somebody can tell you something and the circumstances, the setting they're in really have a bearing on what happens in the story. So, I wouldn't give anything for my journalism experience.
Right. And I know you teach writing.
Sometimes.
But you've done a little bit at Emory or maybe University of Georgia.
Yeah.
What would you say the best advice? Whether you're going to be a journalist, whether you're going to be a fiction or a nonfiction writer, what is that single piece of advice you would give to?
Don't rewrite yourself to death. Don't revise yourself into a hole. Writing is there's so much self-loathing involved in writing. You write a paragraph, and especially if you're a beginner, and you think, oh, that's terrible, and so you delete it. And then you spend 6 months writing one perfect paragraph. Well, the world doesn't care about one perfect paragraph. So what I say is just keep writing. Just keep writing. Write all the way to the end. Then you can go back, you can revise. But, my motto, which you know, maybe they'll put it on my headstone is, you can't fix what you ain't wrote. So write it first and then go back and make it perfect.
So a lot of your books, and I know you grew up in St.
Right.
Pete's, and then but now have a house on, you know,
Yeah.
Tybee, and then but in Georgia. What is it about the South that makes such great fodder? I know for character, but
Yeah.
also dialogue. But what is it about those sensibilities that Southern?
I don't, you know, it's hard for me to pinpoint because I've never lived outside the South. Maybe it's the fact that instead of hiding people who are quirky or eccentric or insane, we don't hide them. We put them on the front porch and they wave and say howdy.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the longing for home. You know, we talked earlier about home. People in the South have been displaced, and not many Americans you know, in modern times have been displaced. So I think Southerners have a deeper longing for home, a sense of it, a rootedness that maybe you don't see in other parts of the country.
But I think it does. It does make such great soil for a story to
Right.
grow.
And it's such a flawed
nice.
place too.
Right.
It's a deeply flawed place, but what isn't?
Yeah, right. Very true. Very true. So I know most of your books end on a high note, and which I think is so satisfying, and I think that is the perfect definition of a great summer read.
Yeah.
But I'd like to know, you talked about what's coming next. And
Yes.
when you're done with this tour, you're going to sit down and write that next book. Can you give us a little hint, maybe, of what that
I can tell you it's set at the beach.
Okay.
And it's so new that it's too early to talk about it. I'm gotten really paranoid about talking too much about the next book because with the advent of self-publishing, I'm so paranoid that somebody will, especially not my ideas so much, because there's a million ideas, but titles.
Right.
Somebody can decide to take your title right now, today, and they can have it. It takes me a year, but they can put it up tomorrow. They can download it and put it up tomorrow.
That's true. So I end these interviews with a little quiz.
Yes.
So you know all the answers. So
Okay.
This is lightning round. Whatever
Okay.
comes to you
Okay.
first, okay? What was your favorite book as a child growing up in Florida?
Swiss Family Robinson.
Okay. How about something in high school? Do you remember something that has stayed with you since high school?
Oh gosh. Rebecca.
So a lot of this makes sense. Okay. How about something when you were at the University of Florida? I mean, your University of Georgia. I'm sorry.
The Mind of the South.
Oh, okay. And who would you say is your favorite journalist? When you were a journalist, someone that you admired tremendously.
You know, there was maybe Irma Bombeck,
Oh, yeah.
because she wrote a column and then she was writing humor and essays, and I can remember thinking, I'd like to meet that lady.
Yeah. Okay. How about a book that you've read that you could not tell enough people to read? That book you're an evangelist for.
You know, there's a book that came out this year called Mimi Malloy at Last. And it's not really a first novel. The woman wrote another novel years and years ago that wasn't well received. But this is a novel about a woman in her 70s who comes from a troubled Irish background, and she's got 5 troublesome daughters. And it's a love story, and it's a story about deeply held family secrets, and it really resonated with me.
Okay, how about, what would you call a guilty pleasure read? Could be-
Regency romance.
All right.
Don't tell anybody.
Okay, I won't. Okay, what about a favorite book you shared with your own children or maybe your grandchildren you love to curl up?
Oh, we have a book that I read to my children and I read to my grandchildren, Harry the Dirty Dog.
Oh, classic. That's
Yes.
a great one. That's a great one. And what are you reading now? Anything you've been reading now that you've really enjoyed?
You know, the most recent love book was Anna Quinlan's Still Life with Breadcrumbs. Just adored that book.
Okay, 100%. Okay, A+.
Thanks.
Mary Kay, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me. Congratulations on Save the Date.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great conversation with New York Times bestselling author Mary Kay Andrews about her new book. It's called Save the Date. You gotta read this one this summer.